It's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around we are on the Steppes of Prague, playing as the forces of the Tomb Kings against the Wood Elves. And of course, Tomb Kings didn't really have much in the way of change this patch. The only major change I can think of is that the ability for the Realm of Souls of Shabti now has a significantly longer cast time. It now takes, I do believe, 10 seconds for it to go off. So it's a pretty hefty cast time. And that's really been the main change to this patch. Otherwise, Tomb Kings are basically the same. Of course, some mild tweaks with the single entity changes, but otherwise their units basically sort of unmodified. However, Wood Elves, of course, well, this patch was all about them, and so they've got some new tools, and I really wanted to make sure this build would be well protected against some of the potential newcomers from the Wood Elf roster, whether they be the terrifying Zoets or the even more terrifying Lost Sylvan Knights, various Dryad shenanigans, Blade Dancers, all that sort of stuff you want to be prepared for and account for. So going over our build here, it's fairly standard, but with a few small tweaks compared to the usual fare. Grand Hierophant Khatep is coming in as my Lord choice. He is mounted on a Casket of Souls, because bombarding Wood Elves is always fun. Casket, of course, just deletes their infantry when it hits. He does, of course, have his Bound Sandstorm to wipe out mobs of infantry. Arcane Conduit, Nair's Incantation of Protection to get that sweet, sweet physical resist, as well as Joff's Incantation of Cursed Blades to boost up units' damage output. We've got the Lich Staff to penalize enemy cooldowns, and of course that will be competing potentially against Drycha here, who does have the Horn of Tal. So we do have her over here with her own cooldown penalty, so the Fang of Talroth there. We'll be slugging it out with the Lich Staff to see who can screw over the others' cooldowns more. And of course, we're going to be trying to use Khatep to support our infantry force as much as possible in our cavalry. Alongside him, there is a Tomb Prince. This bad boy is coming in mounted atop a chariot. I figured chariot's probably the safer pick to run over lots of infantry and cheaper troops, since we are pretty well reinforced against larger units. And the Tomb Prince here does have the Blade of Khatep. This item is, I think, going to be rather critical here because it reduces enemy physical resist by 22%. So it can really help counteract something like the Lost Sylvan Knights. Drops them to about 50% physical resist, which is much, much weaker. Means they're taking about double the damage they would normally. So it's pretty insane. He also does a Tomb Strike for Terror, always useful, and then Curse of Joff to rampage enemy units into bad positions. Besides that, Frontline is composed of some Tomb Guard. These guys are always great against Wood Elves, and still are. They will just mulch through any of their infantry cost effectively, and what they can't beat, they'll lose to pretty efficient. They'll lose to while still doing good hurt. Some Skeleton Spears to support the flanks. A couple of units of them there. The Shabti Greatbow Regiment of Renown, the Chosen of the Gods here to chip away at Wild Riders, Glade Riders, Way Watchers, those sorts of units. That Scattershot is very, very useful for those situations. 2 units of Sepulchral Stalkers, one of them the Regiment of Renown. These guys, of course, do apply, or the Regiment of Renown apply poison on shots, which is really nice. And with their bonus versus large and their missiles, they should be able to deal with, say, Zoets and any of the bigger targets. And more importantly, magic damage on the ranged attacks does mean that against a unit like the Lost Sylvan Knights, they should do some hefty damage. So we're really going to be banking on these guys to do some hard carrying there. Finally, the usual 3 Nehekar and Horsemen in the back. This is just an excellent unit against Wood Elves. Really trades well with any of their cavalry, except perhaps something like Great Stag Knights. But even their reasonable combat stats and hefty weapon strength for such a cheap cav, especially combined with the Joff's Incantation of Cursed Blades, is really, really strong. On the flip side here, we do have the Wood Elves, who are being led by Drycha, and she is, as you can see, leading a core here of Eternal Guard and Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts. So a very hefty armor-piercing lineup. And, of course, Eternal Guard will grind it out rather efficiently with units like Spears, and they'll grind down Sepulchral Stalkers, Nehekar, and Horsemen. However, Tomb Guard should beat the crap out of them, and that's, of course, why the Tomb Guard are here, to deal with units like Eternal Guard. Already, we have managed to chip off some models on those Glade Guards, so Khatep doing some work, 8 kills already. Sisters of the Thorn posturing into position to try to support. Of course, these ladies pretty tough to shut down. They've got 40% physical resist of their own, poison missiles, and both Shield of Thorns as well as Curse of Honor, which makes them extra beefy. On the flank, 2 Way Watchers alongside the Wraiths of the Frozen Heart. And the Wraiths, of course, pretty good defensive unit with Frostbite. And against lightly armored Tomb King Cav, they will still tear them to shreds with their Frenzy and their fairly high weapon strength. You can see 33 base weapon damage there. Stacked on top of 50 melee attack means that there's really, if you get caught by these angry ladies, you're going to get messed up. And 43 speed means they'll actually keep up with slowed Cav reasonably well. On the other flank, Lost Sylvan Knights, the sole other unit being brought in by the Wood Elves. And these guys, we will see how they perform. Of course, a rather terrifying unit to face in melee, especially if you do not have magic damage of your own. But they will potentially be squaring off here with the Eyes of the Desert, and those guys will probably do quite a bit of damage. Now, Starfire Shafts here wasting their ammo on the Tomb Guard, so definitely a bit of a misplay on my opponent there. And they, in turn, are getting kind of wrecked by the scatter shots. Though you can see a bit of a mistake there with the Ushapti. They're scatter shot, like, trailing these... hitting these trailing edge Glade Guards, so definitely annoying there. Beautiful Penumbral Pendulum does go down from Drycha, wrecking these Skeleton Spears as the scatter shots continue pouring in. And I'm going to have to be careful in a second with the Grand Hierophant because we're about to be engaged upon by some angry Glade Guard. Tomb Guard are going to start moving forward, looking to engage. You can see Glade Guard there just annihilated by a disgusting volley from Khatep. Grand Hierophant is taking no prisoners and sending them screeching into the abyss. In the meantime, Wraiths of the Frozen Heart here, mulching through the Skeleton Spears, but I'm going to take my Necron Horsemen and look to flank and smack those Way Watchers. In the meantime, the Chosen of the Gods here do have to back off. We do pop Narrow's Incantation of Protection, protecting them and helping them escape. While over here, the Great Stagonites find themselves engaging upon Necron Horsemen. And just look at those deer. Oh dear, they are monstrous. But those poison shots coming in from the Sepulchral Stalkers, the magic projectiles, are laying waste to the deer Cav, and already 2 models are down. Of course, keep in mind my opponent has no healing, so they're getting annihilated over here. Sister of the Thorn helping, but the poison is affecting a unit that doesn't really matter in this fight. These guys are just pitting the deer in place, and in the meantime, the Sepulchral Stalkers are annihilating the Great Stagonites. Those shotgun blasts of magical venom just doing amazing damage, and the Tomb Prince now pushing forward. Blade of Khatep popped, looking to engage and do even more hurt. Shield of Thorns does help counteract that, but of course those shotgun blasts will continue pouring in, and the Stagonites are bleeding like mad. On this flank, unfortunately, Curse of Honorire does debuff the Necron Horsemen, and although we are able to pressure Way Watchers back with a combination of the Chosen of the Gods and the Necron Horsemen, the Wraiths of the Frozen Heart here really paying for themselves, paying dividends. My opponent on top of his micro pulls back from my Skeleton Spears and blocks my Necron Horsemen, slowing them to 50, making it impossible for me to get in on the Way Watchers and just ruining my day. Frontline Fight, though, swinging decisively in our favor. Tomb Guard crushing the Eternal Guard rather handily. Though Drycha here has punched through the line, it's not really going to matter. Because there honestly isn't much for her to beat up on. She's got 445 weapon strength, so if she stays in sustained combat, she will beat down Khatep, but we're not going to stay there long enough. Over here, Spears do zone out the Sisters a bit, and in the meantime, the poor Lost Sylvan Knights are routed. You can see the Malevolent Dryads that are being summoned and disrupting, while Drycha continues plowing through, looking to get a chunk out of the Grand Hierophant. Poor Stagonites there are routed from the field, and the situation is looking pretty stable. As you can see with all the infantry losses, we are getting our summon, though you can see how long the channeling time is now on the Ushapti, as the Chosen of the Gods continue pouring hell into the Way Watchers. And the Ushapti summon there, coming in, raising from the ground. The Ushapti airstrike is online, and we are immediately going to sick him on the Way Watchers, because I do not want these ace archers doing damage to my troops. Necron Horsemen here do commit against Drycha, who has popped Oakham's Mind Razor, so she'll be butchering them pretty badly, though it does expire pretty shortly. Way Watchers over here firing in, but the Tomb Prince actually slows down the Wraiths of the Frozen Heart, punches through them. It does get snared a little bit there, but the Sandstorm does a lot of damage, and we're able to remove these ladies' HP quite a bit. And of course, my opponent has no healing, so we don't have to worry too much about units recovering, and they're just getting wailed on by a crossfire of damage. Balance of power is a bit in our favor, but it's certainly not the deal is certainly not sealed. The Malevolent Dryads here did clear out the spears, and that is definitely annoying, but they will start expiring soon, and we kind of just ignore them with the Eyes of the Desert, pouring fire into the Sister of the Thorn and making those ladies rout before pivoting Khatep around to engage upon the Dryads. Not an ideal situation. You don't want to waste your shots on a summon, but I wanted to get these ladies removed and clear the way for our Sepulchral Stalkers to do some work. So, Malevolent Dryads there removed from play. Over here, Drycha still pushing through. Very, very annoying. Hard to shut down. Though you can see there we are casting some spells to try to support. Tomb Guard here to just try to pressure the archers, but of course they're just able to split and crossfire us. Though this unit of Tomb Guard here pursuing the Glade Guard far from the field, and that is definitely a huge win for us. Able to remove that very elite unit. The Prince over here goes ham and is able to remove the Wraiths and the Way Watchers. And that does mean my opponent is going to be very low. Very, very low on missile pressure. There is still a handful of Glade Guard here, but they are running low on ammo. And hopefully if we can compromise them somehow, it should put us in a good position. Another Dryad summon, though, coming in on the Sepulchral Stalkers. My opponent, they're doing an excellent job waiting till the last minute to cast those abilities. Joff's Incantation of Cursed Blades there does get some nasty buffs there on our Sepulchral Stalkers. Allows them to slug it out a little more efficiently. Buffs their melee attack, at least. Melee damage. Starfire Shafts are wasting some ammo here on the Nakorn Horseman. Definitely not what my opponent wants. But definitely beneficial for us, as the Eyes of the Desert do commit here against the Eternal Guard. Nero's Incantation of Protection, helping screen them against the AP damage of the Eternal Guard. And this really isn't ideal. Sepulchral Stalkers are not designed to fight a unit like Eternal Guard at all. They're low melee attack and defensive stats. The defensive stats just are not adequate against anti-large infantry. The low melee attack lets them down against the high melee defense. That said, another beautiful vortex there does plow through some of these poor Eternal Guard. Malevolent Dryades just surrounding the Eyes of the Desert, who are holding tooth and nail here best they can, as we do get hit by a Horn of Talroth there. Drycha trying to tank through the Tomb Prince here, and kind of succeeding. But the Chosen of the Gods now out of ammo, just piling through the Eternal Guard, and wasting the ammo on the Glade Guard and Way Watchers. So my opponent now kind of suffering from a lack of ammunition. Way Watchers are out, Glade Guard almost out of ammo, and the Glade Guard and Starfire Shafts here are the last sort of vestige of hope, with 23 rounds, with their 23 models and 10 rounds of ammo. But we do still have Grandpa Khatep online. He does pop the Incantation of Protection, and of course Starfire Shafts haven't been doing magic damage in ages, so they're not going to be very efficient. Though my opponent there sees the trick, shoots at the Sepulchral Stalkers. Good decision there. But the Tomb Prince here is taking no prisoners. Withering has been popped on him, but he just piles through the Starfire Shafts like they're not even there. Mass ain't saving you here, boys, and does crush through these squishy Elven troops, making them pull back and reconsider their life decisions. A Tomb Guard here, still Benny Hilling with the Glade Guard, and this was definitely actually a huge win. At one point, I was considering pulling these guys back from this situation and trying to re-engage, but really, I don't want to get shot by this Glade Guard. We're just going to keep pursuing them, keep them off the field at this stage, and the fight here that's really going to decide the battle is really going to come down to the Grand Hierophant, the Sepulchral Stalkers, and the Tomb Prince, and they're gonna have to do the deed here. Tomb Prince does turn around, punts Drycha away. He does pop the Joff's Incantation of Cursed Blades there, debuffing enemy cooldowns, and piling into the poor Glade Guard, the last unit with ammo, removing them from play, routing them, and my opponent there doing his best to try to catch me, but archers, not the ideal counter to a chariot and melee. Here in the pits, in the meantime, we are going to cast another Sandstorm, and that is the beauty of the excuse me, the rework to the vortexes. They can now hit troops in melee. So here, Grand Hierophant there, between the Curse and the Vortex, able to annihilate this Eternal Guard that would have otherwise been a massive pain in the rear, and that does allow the Sepulchral Stalkers to survive, squeaking by on the bare minimum of HP. So big win for us there. Drycha is piling in, but keep in mind we do still have our Tomb Prince. There's no ammo of these archers, and if this Tomb Prince can get in here and start some cycle charging, this game is definitely ours to have. The Sepulchral Stalkers here holding their own. The Tomb Prince piles in against Drycha. Blade of Khatep popped, removing her physical resist. Keep in mind she has that Shriekin physical resist, so you are able to remove that with the Blade of Khatep. We terror rout all of these troops with the Tomb Strike, which we saved for just this situation, and although the Sepulchral Stalkers are going to die before they can rout this Eternal Guard off the field, the Prince has an open shot at Drycha. He's beating her down, using that bonus versus infantry on the chariot, and it's going to be a full rout. Tomb Guard back there actually finally caught the Glade Guard, and it's going to be a GG for the forces of the Tomb Kings. So very tight, very close game. Very well played there to Barbagianni, and rather fun and fast-paced engagement there. Now, going over the composition here, I do think it's a reasonable comp to bring against Wood Elves. You will oftentimes see a fairly heavy Way Watcher play, or you might see like a cavalry rush. And I think it's either of those. This build is fairly stable. You've got the spearmen to hold up. Enemy cav, while you shoot them with the Sepulchral Stalkers and the Chosen of the Gods. You've got the Casket to annihilate enemy infantry. A little bit of problems maybe against single entities, but against someone like Durthu, the Eyes of the Desert and the Sepulchral Stalkers would really lay the smackdown on them. The amount of AP damage they can churn out at range, and its magic damage that bypasses the physical resist is really immense. And against a big target like Durthu, they will really annihilate him rather quickly. You're looking at something like 2,400 or so damage per every 10 seconds with a unit like this. So it adds up quick, and it means a character like Durthu, or if your opponent tries tree shenanigans, it's not going to hold up as well as they'd like, probably. That said, going over the damages here, which lovely new stat we've got. Keep in mind this does include friendly fire. Khatep, of course, did lay waste to some very valuable enemy units, especially the Glade Guard early on. However, I think I didn't manage him quite as well as I could have. Despite using some nice Sandstorms and getting some good early damage, I think I could have used them better to shut down those Way Watchers. If I'd screened them a bit more efficiently, I could have definitely generated more value there, and probably done more value, or generated more value for my army. So 1,400 definitely didn't pay for himself. Keep in mind, you can't expect, I think, units, at least when you're playing, really against any faction, you're always going to have Crumbling, you're always going to have routes off the battlefield or Shatters. So you can't expect a unit to pay massively more than itself most of the time, unless it's some hard carry unit. But Khatep's performance here definitely solid. 1,400, 2,400 on the Tomb Prince, which is pretty immense. 6,300 HP damage dealt, but it was against pretty high value targets. He beat down Drycha, he beat down, and that's one of the things that's kind of hard to see with the value here. It says 6,300. Obviously, if you did 6,300 damage to Eternal Guard, it wouldn't be that much, but he was hitting some very high value targets, like the Stag Knights, like Drycha, and then in late game, he was cleaning up some infantry, so I think that's where the damage really adds up. And he really generated some damage. Skeleton Spears, of course, you don't expect them to pay for themselves. I'm surprised these guys generated 190 in value. That's actually insane. For a unit that's literally just fodder that's there to be thrown away, not bad at all. I wasn't expecting much better. Tomb Guard, not so hot. One of them definitely did get picked apart by archery fire. The other one, though, did pressure the Glade Guard off the field after beating down the Eternal Guard, so that's a nice little win there. Necron Horseman definitely kind of sacrificed for the greater good, thrown into the grinder against Stag Knights and Way Watchers, so couldn't expect too much there. I'm not surprised by the slow performance. I definitely mismicroed against the Race of the Frozen Heart and let both units of Horsemen get caught by those Dryads, which was a big mistake. I should have used both of them at the same time and let one unit get caught and let the other unit get on the Way Watchers. Sepulchral Stalkers, though, 1,900 and 1,300 damage. I'm actually kind of surprised it's that low, given that one unit essentially annihilated, or they kind of annihilated the Sylvan Knights and the Sisters of the Thorn between them, so definitely generated immense value there. Same with Chosen of the Gods, 1,700, most of that against Way Watchers. So these units just generating some rather good value, I think. Much higher than, even these statistics, kind of, I think, because you don't factor in things like routed off units once again. I do feel like the numbers there might be a smidge lowballed, especially for the poor Sepulchral Stalkers here. I do believe shot up quite a bit of the Sylvan Knights and Sisters of the Thorn, but just looking at the cost value, you wouldn't think, oh, 1,300 isn't that much, but I'm pretty sure when you really think about it, it's like 3,200, of which 3,000 was two of the most expensive enemy units there, getting wrecked, and then holding the line for other units to do it rather well. So some good efficiency there. For my opponent's build, definitely an interesting one. I think it's a bit too heavy on archer play. I don't think there's enough protection against heavy cav and chariot play, because ultimately chariots are still effective against infantry, and something like the Race of the Frozen Heart aren't going to snare you that well. But going over the build here, Eternal Guard, variable. Two of them did basically nothing. Those were the ones that I think fought the Tomb Guard, and they got wrecked. Drycha got some great value. I think somebody probably came out of that early Penumbral Pendulum, but later on she munched through some Necron Horsemen, beat down the Tomb Prince pretty bad, so she definitely paid herself off. But it's really this Eternal Guard. Holy hell. 1,300 damage value. Obviously, these were the guys who fought the Ushabti. I believe they fought the Ushabti. I believe they fought the Sepulchral Stalkers, both of them probably. So, insane value generation there for a unit that only costs 550. Race of the Frozen Heart, this is way, and this shows, I think, the limitations of this value system. 5,500 value, but they stopped 2.5 Garden Horsemen from getting in on Waste Watchers, and the Way Watchers, because of that, expended a lot. Especially one unit expended all of its ammo, and only got shut down once the airstrike came in. So this is such a low ball damage value, in my opinion. They did way more than this would imply, but you know, that just is the way damage is calculated. Most of the damage they did was against spears, and the damage value they generated was just not that high based on that. Glade Guard, 1 unit here, insane generation, once again 1,700 damage, showing what happens when you don't shut down ranged units. These two that got wrecked by Khatep, almost nothing. These guys 1,700 value, wrecking the Sepulchral Stalkers. Dude, Shopti just got shotgunned by those guys, and cross-firing the Tomb Guard, and just terrifying. Way Watchers, not as much generated value. Actually, neither paid for themselves, but that kind of, I think, came down to bit zoning and the amount of pressure exerted on them. Eternal Guard here also generating good value, 800, probably fighting some more elite troops. Stitch of the Thorn, nothing much. Same with the Great Stag Knights, they generate 625 value. Most of that probably against the Necron Horsemen. For a 2,000 gold unit, that's pretty terrible. They got shut down hard by the Stalkers, and I think I would personally not recommend Lost Sylvan Knights against Tomb Kings. I think between Arc and Spirit, potentially Spirit Leeching you, Cetra, I do believe gets magic attacks with the Blade of Tra. I could be wrong. Otherwise, though, if he brings his Chariot of the Gods, he gets magic attacks there. So you'll get wrecked by that. Those are some of the most common Lord picks. And on top of that, you've got Sepulchral Stalkers, who are very common in this matchup. And the Casket of Souls, and the Memeing Skull Catapult. There's just so many tools Tomb Kings have that wreck Lost Sylvan Knights. I wouldn't recommend them in this matchup, I don't think. Of course, fun to see them in action, but not the unit I'd recommend. But regardless, well played to Barbargiani here. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. As usual, leave your thoughts, opinions, comments, and critiques down below. I'll respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.